Okay, so it should have started recording. There we go. Okay, so I've got my floor plan there showing the layout with my new walls shown with a black hatch, just like the existing walls. So I want them now to show with no hatch to show that they're new walls. And so coming over to here, yeah, so they're solid. So I'm going to change these actually to a thinner wall as well. Okay, so these are just interior partitions. They don't need to be that thick. These are 200mm walls at present. So I'm going to go to Edit Type and Duplicate, and then make them have a new name. So I'll call it Proposed 100mm. That's enough. And I'll just go to Edit to change the thickness to 100. But notice I didn't change the material there. So I'm leaving the material as finish, and that finished material is being used by my existing walls as well, and that is just fine, right? Because I'm going to change the appearance of these walls in the plan using the coarse scale fill options. So that's really the thing I want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with. So here using coarse scale fill color, you can see it's on black. I'm going to change that to white. You can see it's already on solid fill, so I'm just going to leave that option. Click OK. So you can see my walls become thinner, but also now it's showing as white in the plan. And then you can see here I've got these walls around my bathroom, which at the moment are just generic 100mm. So I haven't been worrying about putting the tiles on the inside as yet, and that's probably okay for this sort of project. So again, it's 100mm. I'm going to change that over here simply to the new proposed 100mm instead. So all that will do is again make it show white in the plan. And then I might come over and look at these ones. So these are the walls, of course, for the fire stair. So there, again, don't worry about my stairs. I've been messing around with things there. I might just delete one of them. There we go. So that's a little bit clearer. And again, I'll fix that wall up that's going through the stairs later. So again, for now, I'll just select that wall. So I'm going to need a new 200mm wall as well. So again, go to Edit Type. So it's generic 200mm. So I'll go to Duplicate and we'll call it Proposed 200mm. So with real world design projects, you always want to be thinking about the difference between existing and proposed. The proposed things are the things you're paid to design. And you always want to make those stand out from what's existing. Okay, so proposed 200mm, and just changing the color there again to white. So for presentation drawings, that would be okay. But another convention is that that things with no hatch, so in other words, a white fill, are stud work. So this again would be probably timber stud, but it could be steel stud as well. Whereas things that are that have a different material generally would have the material shown in the hatch. And you can do that with the coarse options as well. So here you can see it's on solid fill. And so we could set that to brickwork. And that's a nice easy one to use because brickwork is fairly simple but also well recognized hatch pattern there. And so to make that show, I'd have to change this fill color now to black. That's not black. Just drag it down here. Okay, so that's another option. So you can show the material, and so if you see a material hatch, that should mean that it's a new element. Right, so this existing wall may also be brick in reality, the same sort of brick that this new wall is built from, but you would only hatch the new wall with that brick pattern. And that's a pretty well-known convention as well. But again, for the sort of drawings you're doing, you probably don't want the hatch to show the materials. So again, keep it simple. And it makes it easy though if you are using Revit to manage that. So I could have lots of walls that are this wall type, proposed 200mm. And then while it's a presentation drawing, then I could have the hatch set to solid fill. Put that back to white. And then as we do more design documentation and design development, then I could change this wall type to have that hatch pattern. And of course, all of the walls that are that type will change. So then to, what was I going to say next? Oh yeah, so then just to understand a little bit more about the way the course options work, just wanted to change the graphics here. So you've got there the option to choose the detail level, and they're giving the options coarse, medium, and fine. So if I now change this to medium, notice how it all changes dramatically because we're now no longer seeing what's set in that coarse fill option. So under graphics there, those two options make up your coarse fill display. So that gets ignored whenever you set it to anything other than coarse. So if it's on medium or fine, then it uses the material. So I'm going to change it to shaded and you'll see then we should get some different colors. There we are. Okay, so then you can see this wall over here, it's that cream color because if we look at that wall type, you'll see the material is finish. And finish in my project is set to this shading color, which is that, again, that sort of cream. I'll just make it a little bit darker so that you can see it changing. Okay, so then my proposed wall, this is where you've got to think about the management. I wish they'd actually give you some different options for managing the way shading actually works, but I'll stop complaining about Revit, but there are some issues with the way this works really because that shading color is what you see on the outside of the wall as well. So when you're looking in a perspective view, right, so using camera view there. Right, so if I go to shaded, you can see I get that same cream color on the outside of my wall as what we're showing in the plan. And I think that's a problem because you often would want a different color to show in the plan where the wall's being cut to what you see on the outside. So it's a bit of a problem, but again, if you're using the course option, you can usually work around that because it's actually a good setup once you're using course because then you've got the option to have the color in plan or in section set using that course fill option, and then you can use the material for what you see in your perspective views or other 3D views where you're looking at the outside of your walls or other elements. And again, they've probably done as best they can. It's a bit of a complicated thing to manage. So in architecture, interior design, we do need to have lots of different representations of these things that we're designing. So you can see why there needs to be a complicated setup like that. Again, I think they could have done a little bit better, but you can't blame them for not making it perfect, and it's still, again, pretty good once you understand how to use those things. So again, just want to make sure that's clear that you have the course fill options, and it's only walls and floors and roofs and ceilings that give you those options. So if we go to the section here, you'll see, again, it's got the black fill because this section is set to coarse. If I go to medium, and well, now we don't have any colors because it's on hidden line, but if I go to shaded, then I'm going to get those colors that you saw in the material. And I won't go into overrides, but you can override all of those different displays. So it's actually a very powerful program when it comes to all the different graphics options that it gives you. But again, that coarse option is one of the good ones, even though I know it can take a little while to understand. But again, as you get more familiar with it, you'll find you're probably going to use that a lot. And then coming back to here, so you can see there now I'm doing a bit of a mix because I've got coarse, but it's also on shaded, so I'm getting some of those colors coming through. But I think a final thing I thought I could show you there, I know I've been looking at rendering with Photoshop, and I think that's a really, really important skill that you all need to develop. Just to finish off there, I thought I'd show you a really quick way of getting something similar using using the graphics options in Revit. Okay, so there you can see I've got my floor, my concrete floor there. I might just change it over to the timber one because I've got a timber floor there that's a little bit nicer. Okay, so, and I'm sure a lot of you have done this, setting your plans to realistic to get a quick rendered plan. And that you can still bring these into Photoshop and take them a bit further if you want to. But I just want to make sure you also know about the graphic display options setting there, where you can go down to lighting, and you can use the sun and the ambient light option there to change the brightness of the shading. Also, you can have shadows turned on there. Now, you can see that the shadows are very dominant, but if I go to firstly to the sun settings, I'm going to change it to top left instead of top right, just to make the shadows go the other way. And then you can see there the ground plane was turned off with top right. I'll just turn that off so you can see how it looks. So that's with the ground plane off. If you turn it back on, you can see it casts a building, casts a shadow of the whole building onto the ground, which is way down below, so we don't want that. So you can often just turn that ground plane off, stop that from happening, and again you can change the direction. So the shadows are okay. They're not perfect though because it's getting a bit confused, casting shadows through the windows, and they're all quite difficult things to resolve, and you don't want to waste time on that. So rather than, again, if I was doing this perfectly, I would take it into Photoshop and do the shadows there, to be honest. But again, just to show you a quick workaround, if we go to graphic display options, we can go to lighting again, and you can see there we can then drag the shadow strength down. And so if the shadows are not so strong, you'll get away with errors like that, especially for preliminary drawings. You can also bring the ambient light up. So you can see that it's a lot more presentable. And then the other option is exposure control. So going into there, you can tick enable exposure control. And then, I know it's gone a bit flat, but if you go to manual, you can fine tune that. Okay, so that can be a really nice option, but still pretty quick. Okay, so it's okay. A lot of people like this option, but again, notice how many of the things are not getting very good shadows. Again, maybe I can just show you. You can fine tune the angle. So there, 35. That's quite low. I might make it 45, just so you can see how it changes it. So we could make it even higher. So maybe we'll go for 65. Oh, and it's weird the way it projects them. So we'd have to now bring the azimuth back around. It's, again, some of these developers, you really wonder what their experience in architecture is. I'd say it's almost zero for some of them. So let's try bring this around anyway. 275. Going the other way. So we go back down to 100. This should be the azimuth. That's a compass rose. So it's just not set up correctly. And I've had this issue so many times with this stupid thing. But if you experiment enough, there we go. That's a lot better. So you will get, you can get any angle you want. Again, just here it goes, because I've got it relative to the view. That's why. That was me being stupid. But again, even with that turned off, I've found that it does some very, very strange things. So 225. Yeah, okay, so that's better, still not great. And all right, so that's why one of the reasons that you can get these okay things out of Revit, but you'll find most people would still take it into Photoshop to get a really professional looking, nicely rendered plan. But if you just want to get something quick, then that option might help you. So then just moving on with the details. So I showed you before you can draw detail lines over any of these drawings. So there you can see the detail lines that I drew earlier. And so they've been drawn on straight onto this plan, and I could do the same for anything else. So I'll just maybe quickly show you that. So under annotate, you have detail lines, and there are quite a few there already. So this is another, that's actually a 3D door. So that's looking at open doors. We can hide that. Right, so I've got that open door. If you remember last time, that was for perspective. I think Ali was asking about having an open door in a perspective, which can be a nice thing actually. But I don't want that to show in my plan view. So it can always just be hidden in the plan. But then going the other way, there would be things that I want showing in the plan view that I don't want showing in 3D. So one example, actually, let's go back to the door. So I'll just bring that back. So one example could be a door swing that's different to what you get automatically. So let's say the door's open on the other side, and I'll flip the door that I've drawn in 3D over the other side too, of course. Right, and so then this door, of course, has space to open all the way back to the wall there. And if you've got that option, it's a nice thing to show in your drawings because it's something that you should have considered in your design. So maybe I'll even bring this one a bit back. Maybe not all the way, but maybe to there. So that's still my 3D door, but we've got it showing a bit further open. And so I want that to show with the door swing. And so I'm going to hide the full door, the door family in this view. So I'll just hide that by element. And so now I need to put in the door swing myself. So going to detail lines, you'll see there I've got a series of line styles. Now, most of you will have most of these line styles when you start a new project. The template does give you pretty much all of these line styles you can see. There might be one or two that I've added, but otherwise I think they'll all be there. But you'll see there that you may not have all the line styles that you want. So I essentially want to draw a dashed line for my door swing, even though in reality you can use thin lines. I just want to show you a bit more about drawing dashed lines. And you can see there we've got a few different dashed line styles. So I'll go to 0.1 pen, dash, 0.1, and I'll draw an arc. So using the second option this time, so that's start, so center ends arc. So I'll go from the center, which is where the hinge would be, to the start, which is where the door latch or handle would be, and then come around to the door itself. And so that could always be extended. Actually, it's not bad. It's good practice to extend that to where the door could open completely. So that's quite a common way of showing doors like this, to have the door swing continue past the door. And that does give people a much better indication how that door would open. And so the dash line works at this scale, but if I was to go to a different scale, then the dashes may not be the right size. So I just wanted to show you very quickly how easy it is to make your own line styles. So go to the Manage tab, and then under Additional Settings, you have line styles. So I'll expand this, and you can see then these are the settings for the line styles that have already been made. Just making these fields a bit bigger so you can read them. Okay, so it's quite simple. You have a line weight, right? So 1 being the lightest, and 15 or 16, I don't remember, I think it's 16, is the heaviest. I never go that high, so you don't need to really worry about the heaviest lines. Probably 7 or 8 is about the heaviest you'll ever need. And I'll show you the line weights in a minute. But again, so you just have a number for the line weight. Just remember that. So there we've got hidden, and you can see there it's set to 1. If I click on that down arrow, you can see there it goes up to 16. So again, 1 being the lightest. So then to the right, we've got the line color. So notice again, they use the true primaries, red, green, and blue. And you can specify any color that way. So notice we just have different RGB values there for these colors. You can make it any color you like. And then we've got the line pattern. So if you click there, you have the line styles, also the line patterns that have been loaded into Revit. Right, so they don't have as many as AutoCAD, unfortunately, but it's still a pretty good range of line types. Okay, so I want to make a new one, so I'll go to New, and I'm going to call this Hidden Light. Okay, so hidden is simply a dashed line with a smaller dash than dash, the original dashed line. And so over here, I'm going to change it to hidden. Right, so there it is, hidden. So again, that's just going to be a dashed line with smaller dashes than the original dash line. The line weight, I'll leave it 1, and the color I'll leave as black. So now I can choose my line that's been drawn and simply choose my new line style. There it is, hidden light. And actually they're bigger. Okay, so what's happened there? If we go and look at the line styles, I did notice that it was in the dashed 0.1 that I used is actually not set to dashed. It's set to dash tight. I suppose because it's got a light pen. So it's dash tight, which is, again, another small dash. So if you go to the one that's just called dashed, right, so now if I change it back to dashed 0.1, did I change? Sorry, just check that. I might have changed a different one. Dash 0.1. Oh yeah, that is dash. Okay. Yep. Okay, so that's dash now. Did I get dash 0.1? Yes, that should be dashed. And if we go to hidden, again, some of these developers are on another planet. Yes, hidden. Okay, watch out for that. Dash should always be bigger than hidden, but again, this is just a straight out programming mistake. What they do, they have issues converting the scales correctly from American imperial units to metric, and they sometimes make those line styles the wrong scale. So maybe dash loose is going to give us a big one finally. Yeah, there we are. Okay, so that's correct. And then dash should be about half that size, and then hidden should be smaller again. But you might have to use a bit of trial and error because of the scaling issues coming from America. Anyhow, but hidden light there, you can see fairly light, or fairly small dashed spacing there. So very easy to make your own line styles, and you can make them different colors as well. And I use that all the time for diagrams and different arrows and things like that. But then maybe we'll do some more examples in an elevation in a second as well. So then before I move on from this drawing, I'm going to also put on the symbols that we want. So I'll just close some of these extra views. And I've got this one on a sheet already. Must be this one. Yeah, okay. So I close the others. Okay, so you can see there that I've put the symbols onto the sheet. So the north point and the scale there. This one I'll just set to be no title, so we don't have that tag down the bottom. Okay, so you can either do it like that on the sheet, or you can put those symbols into the view. It's entirely up to you. So again, I'm just cleaning up my tabs as I go. So we'll go back to that floor plan now. So I just wanted to show you a little trick for loading in those symbols, right? Because what I've seen is a lot of people during the week, probably about maybe half a dozen people this week have emailed me asking how to stop it giving you a warning or an error when you do this. I won't even tell you what I'm doing wrong. I'm just going to go and grab one of those symbols. Okay, so I'm going to load in just anyone. There we go. Okay, so you may have seen this message that comes up when you load certain kinds of families. Now, just checking any messages. What does depth queuing mean? Oh yeah, look, that's one I don't think you really need to worry about. I can explain it, but it's not that important. It's to do with the depth of the view. But again, if we get time, we'll have a quick look at that. But I'll just say it's not that important. You really don't need to use that option for your drawings usually. But again, if I get time, I'll have a look at it. So again, here you can see this message. This is a really important one that you'll all get. So it's telling me there that I cannot load the sort of family that I've chosen because of the category. So I used, if you missed it, I used the place a component option. So I'm going to say no there, just so you can see what I did. I chose place a component. It would have been the same if I chose window or door, and then went to load a family and loaded something that wasn't a window or a door. So again, I'm trying to load these graphical scales, but again, they're not the right category. Now, again, I wish the developers would just let you switch tools midstream so you didn't have to go and cancel it and then go and choose the thing you want. But again, some of them are not very clever, so they haven't given us that option. So we need to know what we're trying to load. So there are a couple of little workarounds there. You can either go to load family on the insert tab. If you do that, choose load family, then you can load any kind of family you like. So I've just held down control there to pick two different families. Click open, and it's just loaded both of those. But then to place them, I still need to use the correct tool. So I would need to know that they are symbols. So on the annotate tab, I can then choose symbol, and then you can see one of them has come up automatically on my cursor because it was the last one loaded. If I go to the little drop down list there is the other one. Okay, so that's one little workaround that can make it easier for you to load families. And I know this is something that will happen with most people, that they hit a wall sometimes when they're trying to load different kinds of families. So that's a really helpful thing to know. And I was actually talking with a really clever architect just on the weekend, a guy I still do a bit of work with, and he's a genius. He did really well at uni, much better than me, and he still didn't know that. He spent years trying to load different kinds of families, and only just on the weekend found out about that option to load families on the insert tab. So it's a really helpful thing. Notice it also gives you the option to load multiple families at once. So that's another good thing that will save you time if you need to load a lot of families in one go. That's helpful. So hopefully that's going to be a good thing for you to know. But another workaround is to open the file that you're trying to load. Just say you've downloaded a family and you're struggling to find which tool you need to use to place that family. So Yes, yeah, don't need to show the word up. Yeah, that's a really good one. I'll show you that too. Yep, that's a good point about stairs. Okay, so coming back to the workaround. So again, let's just imagine I've downloaded one of those scale bars from someone else, and I don't know whether it's a detail group or a family, detail family, or a symbol. So often the best way to find out is to go and open that file. Just use File Open. You can choose Family if you like, but often it's easiest just to choose here Revit File, or click where it says Open. That does the same thing. So where it says Open on the menu, or choosing Revit File there, they both do the same thing. I think they just put that option there for the people who weren't clever enough to realize that clicking Open does the same thing. So anyhow, that's another new little feature that it does make it a bit clearer, I suppose. So again here we'll go to choose that file that I've been loading. Let's get this other one I don't think I've loaded yet. Well, in fact, now let's get a new one. Let's get a better North Point. I should have a few here. Okay, so I've got my North Point, and now I'm going to click Load into Project. Okay, so notice how automatically it's got me on the tool that I need to place that sort of family, that North Point family. And now I know that it's a symbol because it tells me up here, it says place symbol. So I'm using the symbol tool. And if I go to the Annotate tab, you'll see it's actually going to be highlighted already. Okay, so that can be good if you have to do a bit of detective work to find out what category the family belongs to. And there are many, many categories. Okay, so don't think it's easy because or that you're doing the wrong thing if you don't automatically know what category something is, because again, there are more than just door, window, and component. There are plenty of others that you wouldn't have come across yet, like the structural categories and the mechanical and the other systems categories, like all the plumbing categories. There are lots. So again, just doing that little step, that little trick of opening the file and using Load into Project may save you a lot of time and effort when you're trying to work out which tool to use. So hopefully that'll help you as well. And then, so you saw there, I'll just close this. So you saw there that I could place the North Point in the view. And that will work. So I'm going to just do that. I'll go back to Annotate. And then I can put the symbol, the North Point symbol, onto this floor plan. Some people like to do that because then each plan that needs a North Point will have it already there when you go to place it on the sheet. And if you end up, oh, sorry, it's not that sheet, is it? It's this one. So if you end up moving your plan from one sheet to another, so let's say I decide to take the plan off here and then go to place it on another sheet, then the North Point goes with it. So that's a nice thing. But as some of you mentioned, you would generally want the North Point, and anything really that can be lined up should be lined up. So I've just deleted the North Point from my plan view. I activated it and just deleted it quickly, just so I can then show you the other way, which is to place the North Point and even your scale bar on the sheet. And that allows you to position it in exactly the same spot on each page. So I might delete or just make a new sheet with the same title block. So this title block is A2 metric blank page. Right, so it's the blank sheet that I showed you last time. And so now I'll go and make a new sheet and use the same exact title block. So now going back to the previous one, so using symbol, I can again place my North Point, and we'll quickly have a look at maybe how you can edit these families very easily. North points don't need a certain or an exact size, so it's a graphical symbol, so you can make it whatever size you think looks good. So this north point was set up for a smaller page. It's a little bit small for this sheet size maybe. So I can always select that, go to edit family, and again they're just like detail lines. Now, just to make it confusing, in a family, they're not called detail lines. These lines that you can see there in the north point, they're called symbolic lines. There is a reason for that. I won't go into it, but there is a reason. So just try to remember that. So on the Create tab, you can see there, it's actually just called the line tool, but you'll see in other instances it will come up and tell you it's called a symbolic line. But they do behave just like detail lines. In other words, they're 2D lines. So just wanted to point that out. So again, you can create new lines under the line tab, and maybe I will just draw a couple just so it's clear how this works. So again, they have slightly different terminology to detail lines in a project. Detail lines in a project have line styles, whereas symbolic lines have subcategories. Again, it's just a difference in terminology, but it basically means the same thing. So here, generic annotations are pretty much like thin lines in a project. So I'll just draw some lines here that are going to maybe thicken that north indicator. So let me just make that a little bit narrower. And then maybe I want to make the whole thing a bit bigger too. So I'll just change that radius, maybe make it 8. Move my text. Again, I'm not going to be too fussy with this, just moving it by eye is fine. And then maybe I can even center my little thickened line, like so. Okay, so maybe that's how I want it to be, or maybe we'll just bring those in a touch, just to make it look a little bit prettier. There we go. Okay, so now I can save as family, give it yet another name, and then load into project. And you can see there it's on a different sheet, and I don't want to place it on this sheet, so I'll go back to the sheet that I wanted to place it on. So not even that one, it's this one here. So there is the original north point. I don't need to delete that. I can just select it and choose the new one. Very easy to modify and make into your own style. So I've got the north point there, and if you're wondering where to place them, there is no rule, but I suppose most people used to looking at drawings like this would expect it probably in the bottom right corner, or maybe the bottom left, but usually towards the bottom of the page. But not always, it can be up towards the top. But I suppose it would be often near the corner, but again, I have seen them dead bang in the middle as well. So again, there is no hard and fast rule for the positioning of the north point, but the general principle is that you want them on any sheet that contains plans, and for each plan that's at a different orientation. So you might have this one oriented one way, and then if you, let's say, had a true north view, okay, so this view, well, that's our true north view. At the moment, it's the same orientation. So what I might do there, even though you don't have to do this, you might have realized that north is, what is it, this way, I think? That's where north really is. So it's just a bit to the left of where we've, what we've been using. So with Revit, you can set true north in the true north view, just like I am doing now. And if you want to go further into this, have a look at the full set of videos that I've done where I went through all of this at the beginning. So here I'm using rotate true north, and I'm going to bring that angle around. Okay, so that view is now oriented to true north. Now, I'm just going to double check if I got it the right way. Oh, I keep going to the wrong Chrome. So hopefully you would know by now just by looking if I've got that right or not, but maybe I'll open up the map view just so that you can confirm that. Isn't that Myrtle? Oh no, sorry, Myrtle is near the other park. Ah, why can't I see it? Is it down here? Why can't I see Myrtle Street now? Ah, my brain's not working properly today. Ah, I'm going to have to search for it for once. Oh, it's because I'm on the wrong part of Chippendale. No wonder. Okay, there we are. That's it. Okay, so that's the right park, isn't it? Yeah, that's got to be it. Yeah, so that's it. So there you can see this is map view. So it's already oriented to true north. Yes, I've got that right. Okay, so that's a true north view. Okay, so I'm going to set that scale to say 1 to 500. So it's going to be very small on the sheet, just so I can show you a basic principle. So coming back to the sheet that I've got the plan on now, if you put that true north view on, then the building's at a different angle. So it would need its own north point. That's what I'm trying to show you. So again, it's only for each plan that has a different north. And so here we've got the north is actually correct here. Now you don't have to show the true north view, but if you were to show it, then north would be straight up. Okay, and that then gives you an indication which way this one should be. So this north is slightly this way. And actually I can give you that measurement. Maybe that'll help you. So, okay, so that measurement is, or should be taken from vertical. So here I'm just going to measure that to any vertical line, and it is 18 degrees. There we are. On this one. Okay, so you could always rotate it exactly to that amount. So here, using rotate, I can type in 18. Okay, so that's the basic principle with north points. That's the only thing you need to make sure of, that each plan that has its own north direction needs a north point. Right, so you'd probably try and make it as neat as possible if you needed to have different north points on the page. Right. But if you had two plans that had the same orientation, like these two, they don't both need a north point. And the same goes for scales. So each drawing that's at a different scale needs its own scale bar. So coming back to bring in another symbol. Okay, so this one's at 1 to 100, I think. I know it's 1 to 50. Okay, so that one, of course, needs a 1 to 50 scale. I don't have any of this type loaded, but I've got the other one. There we are. And then this drawing up here is 1 to 20 or 1 to 10 even, I can't remember. It's a 1 to 10. No, 1 to 20. All right, so, okay, so I don't have a 1 to 20 scale bar loaded. So maybe because I didn't give you a 1 to 20 scale, what I might go through then is how you can easily make a 1 to 20 scale from one like this. Very easy. Okay, so here, this one's 1 to 50. I think this is the one I gave you. So if I go to Edit Family and change this over here, that's 5 meters. So to go to 1 to 20, very simple, that becomes 2. Okay, so then halfway, that would be 1. Right, so measuring with the dimension tool from here to, that should be halfway again, and then to the end, you can see that's equal. Now, it's 50 mil, but that's correct because if you do the simple calculation, when this is at 1 to 20, right, in total, that's 100. 50 plus 50. If it's 100 in total, 100 times 20 is 2,000. And that's why it's 2 meters. Okay, so then the next one, I don't need the 2 there, so I would move that across. Right, that was for the 1 to 50, but for 1 to 20, we could just move that across. So again, calculating the next one, well, we probably don't need to because I'm sure you can all divide 2 by 2 to get 1. All right, so we know that's a 1. But again, if you want to do the calculation, 50 times 20 is 1,000. So again, it's good practice with basic maths. And so then you might change the arrangement there of those other measurements. So again, measuring to halfway, I'll maybe delete some of these dimensions, bring this across, so that's 50. So if we measure again to here is now 20, which really doesn't make sense. Right, we probably want something for 0.5, 20 or 2/5 of 1 is 0.4, and so that's what this would be if we're going to leave it there, but that doesn't really help anyone. So it'd probably be better to take away some of these lines. So maybe this one, I think, can just go. How's it going to go? It's going to go up, down, and in fact, probably that would be enough. In fact, we can just take all of these other lines off as well and extend this one across. Come on. And then bring this across to 25. Okay, so again, 25 times 20. We bring that across. Of course, is 500, so 0.5. Okay, so that might be a good setup for a 1 to 20 scale. And it's a good thing to try and make some scale bars rather than just using some that have been given to you. And I know it may seem a little bit complicated when you do it the first couple of times. But again, it's something that everyone who worked in this industry in the past would have done when it was all done by hand, because it was standard practice always to draw your own scale bars. And very easy. I mean, when you've got a scale ruler there, you're just basically drawing the measurements directly off or copying them directly off the scale ruler. But again, you can easily apply those principles when you are drawing in Revit. So that's what I've done. So I'm going to go Save As, Family, give it a new name, 1 to 20, that'll do. And I have done that already, so I must have shown you this before, but again, doesn't hurt to see it again. So let's save as family and 1 to 20 clean 2. So again, load the project, and so I could place it in the plan view here, but you may find it's easier to place it on the sheet. And the beauty of Revit is that it makes no real difference. It doesn't look any different, but when it's on the sheet, it's maybe a little bit easier to manage. Okay, so I've got those symbols on the sheet where I want them to be. And so then I'm going to show you the trick to get them into the same place exactly on each page. I'm just giving myself a little bit more room there. So I don't want that scale bar to be totally in the, or right in the bottom right corner, because we'd normally want a drawing number and maybe even some other information there. So I'm going to move it away from that. And it doesn't hurt to have the scale bar maybe to group together with your north point, just to make things a bit easier for other people to find when they're looking at your drawing. So maybe that would be a good arrangement, or even the other way around. You could have the scale bar first, north point second. Just think about what looks better, really. So we're trying to be designers and make things look nice. So a lot of this is just almost, artistic composition. So again, it's not to meet any technical requirements, just to make things look pretty. So that might be good, but your eyes will tell you, I think it looked better the first time, so I'll put it back the other way. Okay, so I've got my position. That's where I want it to be on the page. Maybe I'll just get the plan a little bit higher and lift them up a little bit more. Yep, okay. So now I want them to be in the same spot on another page. So as you may have seen just before I started recording, they have finally given us a really good way to do this. Okay, so using the window left to right to select, I can select those two families and then go to copy to clipboard. And then as long as I have a sheet, another sheet that's the same size, and of course I do, right down here. Sorry, didn't want to do that, just want to open it. So annoying, this thing. The double clicking that no one wanted, but that's what they've done. Okay, so so as long as you have another sheet the same size, then you can put those things in exactly the same spot. So I've opened up my new sheet. Now I'll go to paste and then simply choose align to current view. How easy is that? All right, so they're always going to be exactly the same spot. Now that's good for symbols and things like that, but then unfortunately there is no way to copy views to the same spot, because you can't copy a view from one sheet to another. But it's something you'll want to do, right? Because here I've got my whichever floor plan it is, I don't even remember, but what is it? Level 1 floor plan. Okay, so let's say I want the level 2 floor plan to sit exactly in the same spot on the next sheet. And that's a really nice thing. I'll just show you my drawing set again that I had open earlier. This is the one where I've combined the sheets, so these don't line up exactly. Well, they're not too bad, but I wasn't that fussy with this one. They're okay. Right, so see how at least these drawings at the bottom line up exactly with the next set of drawings. Right, now it's not that clear in this drawing set because these are reduced size drawings. So I'll just open up the one with the larger format. Here we go. Okay, so there you can see as I'm flicking through these drawings, so that's the ground floor. This is the floor above. Next level with the first level of residential, next level, and so on. They all line up perfectly. So people can clearly see how the plan changes as you ascend through the building. And then it's the same with the the axes. So here you can see, so this is the car park, and then you can see as it builds up to add each level, they're all lined up exactly because I've lined these up on the sheet, and you can just see the building building up. Right, now to achieve that, in Revit, you have the official way, which I think's, to be honest, I think it's idiotic, but this is what they've given us. On the View tab, you have this option to make what's called a guide grid. Now, I've spent a lot of time with it. I used to teach it. I generally advise these days that you don't even worry about it. It's such a cumbersome approach that I wouldn't really even look at it if I was you. I know how to use it, and again, I don't really ever use it anymore unless I have to. So, but that's the official way of lining things up from one sheet to another. I'm going to show you a better way though, because again, it's such a tedious tool. I think it's far easier just to draw detail lines on your sheet. So on the Annotate tab, I'm going to draw a detail line from the corner here, and I will then take it to a point that I can line up with the next floor plan. So here I'm going to go into that corner. Okay, so there it goes from the corner of my page to where the plan, of course, has a corner in the building. So now I go to my new page. I'll get the next floor plan. Okay, now just to save some time, I'm going to get the graphics that I had from the lower level. That might be a good thing for you as well. Going to the one that I've been showing you, I'm going to right click on this view. You don't need to do this, but just if you want to, you can use view templates using, firstly, create view template from view. I can then save this setting, so I'm going to call it my rendered plan. So then I'll go to my level 2 floor plan that's partially set up, and then to finish that, I'm going to right click and go to apply template properties and choose my rendered plan. How easy is that? So now they've got the same graphics. So I'm going to then just rename it so I know which one it is. So PS, just putting there so I know that's the one. Okay, so now I'll go back to that new page. And it is already on another sheet, so I'll go and I'm just going to delete that sheet. Here we go. Okay, so I've deleted the sheet that the plan is on, so now I can put the plan onto this sheet. Okay, so now to get it in the right spot, I'll go to, oops, so I've got a few things open. Just go back to the one that had the, not that one. So this is why you want to keep closing your tabs. There we go. So this is the one that has the plan with my detail line that I've drawn. So I'll choose copy. And then going to my new page, we could just use paste align to current view and it would put it in the same spot. But if you have a different sheet size, don't worry, because you can just paste it anywhere and then you can always move it to the corner. So this really is a measuring stick. So I can move that detail line to the corner of this page, and now I know that the other end of that line, that's where I need to line up my plan. I'm just going to do that by eye. So I'm just going to drag this so it snaps roughly to the end of that line, but I'm not going to be too fussy there. I'll just zoom in a bit and just get it by eye. Close enough is good enough. Right, if it's less than a millimeter, when you zoomed out, you won't notice. And so this is all about graphics, so we're not really needing to get into really accurate measurements here. And now I can just select that line. Okay, so that's a simple way of lining things up across different pages. So what else was there? There are a few. Oh yeah, so I started to look at elevations, doing detail lines in elevation and section. So better have a quick look at that. So going back to the section there, sorry, to the plan there. So I've already got a call out of the area there of that kitchen, and I'm pretending that it's going to be one that can rotate on some tracks, I suppose. So the tracks may need to be tidied up a little bit. So I'll make that a bit larger, so 950 maybe, so they're a bit closer together, maybe even more, 980. And so now the other side can be the same. And then the outside might come in a little bit. Okay, the dash lines will line up better once I stretch them so that they're roughly the same length. So it all comes back to drawing principles once you start working at this level, because you're not trying to model the thing the way it's going to be built in 3D, you're just trying to draw a representation of it using 2D lines. So there may be a bit of tidying up that you've got to do that you wouldn't always with 3D models. But again, this is the way it's been in design for forever, really, ever since people started designing things. And they've been looking at how to represent what they're designing without having to make the whole thing. That's really what a design drawing is. So again, I've got my dashed line there, and now I can look at getting an elevation that's going to pick up some of these things. So you've got the crop region there, which I might just bring out a little bit to give myself a bit more room. And you can see I'm getting some other elements coming into this drawing. If you don't want those things to show, again, don't overcomplicate it and try to use cropping to get rid of those things. Often it's easier just to hide things like that. Just hide by element. Get rid of that dimension. And so then I can make additional elevations from this view. Which tool did I use to cut? To cut the detail lines, do you mean? So they were already broken, but maybe I'll show you. If you need to break one, I'll draw a new one. So, okay, so back to detail lines. Okay, there's two options. Firstly, if you know in advance that you need an arc, even if it's if you wanted to draw it like a circle, in other words, you want to start from a center point, sometimes it's easiest to use an arc tool rather than to draw a circle. So that's the first thing. So you've got their center ends arc, and so I can pick up the center of these curves by typing SC, which is snap to center, and then draw an arc a bit like a circle by starting at a certain point and then coming around so far. Now you can only go up to 180 in this way, and then if you want to go further, you'd need to draw another arc starting from a new point. But again, sometimes it's easy if you know in advance that you need to break or have your arc or your circle effectively broken. Sometimes it is easiest just to draw it with the correct arc tool. But again, let's say you do have a circle and you want to break it. So again, back to detail line, and I will draw a circle. I'll just stick with this dashed 0.1 pen, I suppose. So drawing a circle then, and again, I'll just keep showing you that great shortcut, SC, to snap to center. Sometimes you just have to use that. It's the only way to find the center point sometimes. So I'll draw my circle. Okay, and then let's say we want to break that circle so that I can then trim it to some different lines. So I might even draw some lines just as an example so you can see how that will work. Okay, so I've got a couple of lines there that I want this circle to join to when I use trim. So I'll try and do it now, trim to corner. and then I'll choose the circle and the line, and you can see the line is trimmed, but not the circle. Okay, now this is where it's weird. If you do it a couple of times, sometimes it will break it for you. In other cases, it will give you a message telling you that you've got to do it yourself. So it's important that you know how to do it manually, even though, again, sometimes the trim tool will do it for you. When I hide those things, I've just done an undo, but I've got to hide these again. Okay, so then to break that circle, you can use the split tool, split element, and that's really the key to it. Yeah. So again, with split element, you really just need to choose the circle at one point. That should be enough. In fact, now that's been broken at 2 because I must have done one earlier. So because I did the trim. So I'll just draw another detail line to get a circle that isn't broken. Okay, so again, with the split element tool now, again, I just need to choose it at one point. And we're all good. So then again, with trim to corner now, I can choose the circle and then the line, and notice how it's broken it, or it's taken it back to this point here, where I split it. So now I can do the other side, and it's much clearer then how it's working. Okay, so it's just that split element tool. Yeah, so then we can look at this in elevation. So to get your details working in elevation, I think I started to do this last time, but we'll maybe take it a little bit further. So just bring this out a bit more, and again, I'll keep hiding things. You kind of have to do this with plan details. You'll often get elements that you don't want showing up, but you need to bring them out just because you need room for the views. So under the View tab, I'm going to go to Elevation. And then I'll just click here to try and create one. And, oh yeah, so there you can see it's come up with a warning to tell me that the elevation view isn't visible. So it must be hidden, in other words. Right, that's usually the reason you get that message, not always. But if you see that message telling you that what you've created is not visible, the first thing you should check is the visibility. In other words, whether it's hidden or not. And using the light bulb there, you can often work that out. So there you can see it's showing me my elevation symbol. And here, this is one of the common issues with these. It's finding a wall. So it's pointing up and to the left to see that wall. So I'll look at how you can resolve that. But firstly, I need to unhide it. So I'll select my elevation symbol, go to unhide element, click on the light bulb again. And so now the elevation symbol is showing as it should, but we can see it's facing the wrong way. Now you can rotate elevations using the rotate tool. So I could bring that around. And it has rotated, but now it's gone outside the view and I'd have to go and find it. So I'm going to undo that. And instead of doing it that way, I'll delete that view and I'll make a new one. So back to elevation. So notice as I move the symbol around, how it's changing direction. So that's the reason I needed to make it show first. If I couldn't see it, then it would have been very difficult to place it at the right angle. So there I've got the symbol actually pointing up. Now, if you're wondering why it is looking in all these different directions, essentially elevation views look for walls. So it's looking for the walls that are actually outside of the view. And notice how even if I just take it up to here, where it's just inside the view, the whole thing's going to be hidden. And the reason again is because the view, even though the symbol is inside the region, the view is outside that crop region. So that's if you're wondering why, that's why I had to bring that crop region out so much. Now it will be hidden, so you don't have to worry about seeing that border. But again, you do need to think about things that might look better or be better to have hidden. So again, coming back to the elevation. Right, so there's a couple of good tricks here. What you can do is just put one in that's not the right angle, but oriented the right way. So that's oriented essentially up and down. So it's north-south. Now I can always now select this and then turn off the one at the top, and it'll tell me that elevation will be deleted. Yep, no problem. And then turn the one on at the bottom. So a few good tricks like that will help you with your joinery and similar elevations. And now I can copy that and do the same thing, except this time I'll turn the side on and turn the bottom off. Okay, so now I'll copy this again. And this time I'll turn the top on and turn the side off. And then one more time. And then again, top off, and then the side on. Okay, so there we are. So now I've got 4 elevations at the angle that I want. So I'll go now to one of them. If you're wondering how they're named, just have a look in your project browser and you'll see it'll usually give them names like this, elevation 1. So if I was to make another elevation, I'll just do that. All right, just put it anywhere. So that will be elevation 2, the new one. Okay, and then the sub views, or the views that are made from this tag, and that's why it's actually a good thing to copy them when you're doing joinery drawings, because then they'll all be elevation 1, and then the others are now 1A was the first one, so next one's 1B, 1C, and 1D. Okay, so I'll just open up one of them just so you can see what I'm getting. Oops, so just trying to double click on the arrowhead there. Okay, so it also needs to be cropped. It's done a reasonable job of cropping it, but I need to crop it even more to save myself hiding all of these things that I really don't want to see in this view. So I've cropped it back, but then I've got a lot of things I would still need to hide. So using a combination of VH and EH. VH is view hide, hides the whole category. EH is element hide. Right, so these, what are they? They're generic models. So, okay, so I'm going to try VH. Yeah, and that's hidden all of my generic models. Now, VH, if you aren't used to the shortcuts, it's the same as if you choose view, hide in view category. This is a column, so VH. I don't want any columns in this view. That's a wall, VH for that. And so specialty equipment, don't want to see that either, VH. And then all I have now is the casework and the sink. That's a nice thing to keep. Now this unit is mounted to the floor, so I probably want to keep that the floor showing, even though you might want to reduce it just to a single line. You may not want the hatch to show. And then the level, it's debatable whether you'd keep that or not. For construction drawing, you would definitely keep it. For presentation drawing, I'd say maybe it's better to take that off. So again, I'll hide that. And sorry, I just hidden by element. I should have just hidden the sections by category as well. Okay, and then we can bring this up and see that overhead cabinet. I might need to include that in the drawing as well, but I'm not sure if this overhead cabinet really makes sense. But if it was to be there, then you would definitely include it in the drawing. Yep, so then, okay, so again, if this is going to be a rotating thing on wheels, right, so then you might do some more modeling. So if we bring the base of this up to, let's say, 100 mil. Right, so I'm making the start 100 for both of these extrusions, so they both start 100 mil from the ground. Okay, and then for the 3D views, if they're big chunky wheels, then you may want to show them, and you could always try and find a family like that includes all of that detail. But if it's just for the elevations, like I'm doing here, again, you can just draw detail lines. Right, now, notice I've gone to the annotate tab just so you can see there, you can draw them in the family, but remember, like I showed you before, they're called symbolic lines when they're in a family. Oh, sorry, I just spilled tea all over my computer. What am I doing? Okay, so so with symbolic lines though, in a project, you've sometimes got to think about the planes. It gets a bit involved. So I'm just showing you these so you maybe know. We can't even get the right plane here. So anyway, just showing you those so you know that they are an option, but it's a bit more involved than using detail lines, even though they are effectively the same thing. There are some little differences, so I don't want to go too far into that. So instead of using symbolic lines, I'm going to finish the model and again just go back to detail lines. So with detail lines, notice how it hasn't come up asking me to choose a plane or anything like that. And I'll also get all of the line styles that I would have set up as I showed you earlier. So the dashed lines and other things. So I'm just cleaning the tea off my poor little keyboard. Here we go. Okay, so again here with detail lines, where did I go there? Must be a shortcut or two. Okay, so back to detail lines, and I'll just get my go-to thin lines that I use all the time and draw something that looks like a wheel. So a wheel in elevation, maybe very simple, probably just a bracket either side. So again, look up the Fellow catalog or something to see different views of these things. And you can also, of course, Google it. I'm sure you'll find lots of things. So that'll be the two brackets that support the wheel. And then the wheel itself might look like basically a rectangle with a rounded top and bottom. So maybe something like that. Again, so it's really just a drawing exercise. And then the top could be rounded and the bottom as well. Even though it may not be this rounded in reality, it makes it look like a wheel when you draw it like that. Okay, so that looks like a wheel. Very simple 2D drawing, but that's the sort of thing you might be looking at. Going to the side, if you were to see it the other way, well, I mean here, very simply, we'd probably have it in the same orientation on the different parts of the cabinet, so you could just simply copy it, something like that, and you can see that's starting to look like a wheel. Or they both are, and then maybe we'll go to one of the other sides, yeah, and draw a wheel looking the other direction. So again, firstly, to clean up the view, crop it as much as you can. Just hiding with the VH there as much as I can. Yeah, VH, oops. Show that again, VH. Yep, and that'll do. Okay, so get my cabinet above, coming back. And let's get rid of that level. Okay, so then that same wheel from the side would, of course, from the other side would look, of course, a little bit different. So maybe it would look something like this. and then a big circle for the wheel itself. And if you could go back and measure the other drawing to work out how high it had been drawn and line those things up, but you're not designing the wheel. It's going to be made the same way by the manufacturers regardless of the way you draw it. So don't need to be too fussy with the measurements for things like this. As long as it's got the right overall size and it's going to fit in with the space you've allowed for it. Don't worry too much about accuracy with things like this. So there, I've just split that. I might split it in another spot just so I can delete the leftover bit, and then I can simply drag these ends. Save me using trim or anything like that. All right, so that's probably good enough for the wheel. Maybe you could make it a little bit more presentable by drawing in a few more things. Maybe another circle on the side might be good. And then I can see, well, it's not quite symmetrical, is it? So in fact, maybe we'll go the other way. And this is where it's actually pretty nice to draw with, because it keeps lines connected. So notice how when I move those diagonal lines, that the circle that had been stretched to those lines earlier, of course, keeps going with it. So it does have some good little things like that. Okay, so then maybe it's got to be set back a bit more, but then again, they can just be copied. Now, I'm not saying that would be a difficult thing to model in 3D anyway. It wouldn't be hard at all, actually, but it's overkill. And if you were to put these 3D wheels onto all of the furniture pieces, it would make the geometry fairly complicated and would slow things down. And in your perspectives, you're probably not going to notice any details like that. But of course, in these little design details, you will. So that's where you should draw that. So that's, I think, going to give you most of the things you need, and use the same approach for even your cabinetry. So let's say this unit had some doors on it. In your perspectives, you may not even see this side of the unit, but even if you were to see it in a perspective view, it's probably not all that important to show details like that. As long as they can see the basic shape and the materials, that's really the purpose of the perspectives. And so then we can always add detail, and it's cheating in a way, but no one needs to know. And then you're saving yourself a huge amount of work. And again, it's still going to be made in exactly the same way. So here, if we just draw a few lines to represent our doors, you might put in some dashed lines to indicate which way they open. Or I can use my hidden line style now that I've made. Okay, so if you don't know, these are called chevrons. Chevron is Old French for arrow, as far as I know. So a chevron is simply an arrow or an arrowhead that points in the direction that something, in this case, is opening. So that shows us that the handle would be in the middle there. You could even draw the handles if you want to. Again, doesn't hurt, and it makes things clearer for everyone. Shows that you've thought about that in your design. That's really what you're trying to communicate in these design details quite often as well. Not necessarily all of the construction, but the main elements and really how the unit is meant to operate. So again here, you can tell I really like the rounded corners. And so that would be enough for a door handle. If you like these, I don't really like these door handles, but again, this is, if we're going to show them, what they might look like. I much prefer recessed personally. And then you wouldn't have to draw anything much, but again, if you're going to have door handles, that looks like a door handle. And right, so again, in 3D, we don't have any of that detail, but of course in the elevation, that can all be picked up. Okay, so that's, and then maybe, I mean, if this is going to be something spinning on a point, then the thing that it's spinning on may be an important thing to show. So what I can finish up with there is a way of showing you, or an option that I can show you to locate something that's been drawn in 2D in an elevation. And that's where sometimes you will have issues using that approach that I'm showing you, of basically going back to first principles and the old way of drawing everything individually in 2D, the way we did everything in the past, and essentially just applying those principles with Revit. But then again, it can be a problem because in AutoCAD, and also when we used to draw by hand, you would be projecting off the plan, so there'll be no issue projecting from, say, this circle to work out the center point of that circle on the elevation, because you already would be projecting from it. But because I'm getting this elevation from a 3D model, this 2D line work isn't going to show up in my elevation, of course. So I've got to use another approach to get that center point worked out. And this is where reference planes will help you a lot. So I can go to draw a reference plane now and either go from the center again, so typing SC to snap to center. I can bring that up. Now, again, I'm getting the message telling me that it's not visible in this view because it's been hidden. That's okay. I don't need to see it in this view. I'll show it to you anyway. Clicking on the light bulb there, you can see there it is. Okay, so I can unhide that now if I do want to see it in the plan. But again, I don't need to see it here. Really, where I want to see it is in the elevation. So I'll go to the elevation now, and you can see it's already there. I hadn't hidden it in the elevation view, but if it was hidden, of course, we could use the light bulb to unhide it. So there's my reference plane showing me where the center point is, and now I can draw some more detail lines, and these would be for effectively for the hinge that this thing is spinning on. It would have to be a big chunky bit of steel, right, with a set of bearings and everything. So again, you don't need to be an engineer and work out all the construction of these things, but if you just draw something that looks believable, right, then it makes it convincing for your assessors and your clients, and you'd often then just work out the construction and maybe do a bit of research and try and find out exactly how these things are made. As long as you've drawn something at the design development stage that looks kind of convincing, that's good enough. Just trying to think, that's maybe a bit high. These probably would be, yeah, something like that. And then maybe even that can be lower. Okay, so again, that can all just be mirrored now. Okay, so again, looks like a 3D thing, but of course we know that it's just some lines, some 2D line work. And again, that wouldn't be important to show in 3D. If it's right under the bench, then you're probably not even going to see it in your perspectives. So there was one other thing that relates to 2D drawings. I think Elena was asking about. Oh yeah, the stairs. That's right. And I'll do the thing with the array with that Tiffany's had with the lights in another video, because that's more a 3D thing. But that's a really good one as well. We'll do that next. So, so coming back to the plan. Okay, so I'll just save this and then go back to that plan view. Ah, my little cat, she's so bad. That was her jumping on the keyboard. She's so bad. She's been really naughty today, so she's in trouble. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so going to the stairs, you can see over here, the stair has the up arrow showing. Okay, so it's really important that you realise in basically I think everywhere except America, I'm not sure, there might be other countries that do follow the American approach, but everywhere, as far as I know, apart from America that I've ever come across, they don't use up and down arrows. So you'll see here, if I go to the level 2 plan, that same stair has a down arrow. Now, unfortunately, I haven't cut a hole for it yet, so maybe I better fix that up. So I'm going to do the, I'll put the shaft in here as well, just to get that to read a bit better. That floor can go, and I will just put in a shaft and take out all of this. And in fact, we don't even need a floor over there, so that can all go. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, so I'll set the shaft to start from level 1, and I'll just bring it up 1,000, and then go up to level 2 and top. It can be 0, but I'll make it 100 just in case. There we are. Okay, so now you can see the stairs because I've cut the hole in the floor. That wall, can that be brought back? Yeah, I think that can be brought back. So I'm not even going to bother about cutting a hole in that wall. I'm just going to stretch it down to here because I can. Delete the door. Yep, all good. Okay, so now we can see the stair. And so then again, we've got a down arrow. So just going to close some of these other views and get back to the 2 plans. Oh, that's the call out. There we are. Okay, so there's the stair on level 1 and then the same stair on level 2. So firstly, I'm going to use tab to select that stair path. So it's important you realise stairs are one thing, but since I think it was 2018, anyhow, a while ago anyway, they changed the stair tool in Revit. So you'll see if you get the older versions, if you get an earlier version of a file made an earlier version of Revit, where are you on floor? Where one when you cut? Oh, when I made the void, do you mean? Yeah, so making the shaft, I mean. Yeah, so when I was making the shaft, I made it on level 2, but that's not the important thing. You can make the shaft on the lower level or the upper level. It doesn't really matter. The key thing when you're making a shaft is that you look at the levels that are set from the base constraint and the top constraint. But it's good you asked that. So I might just show you the shaft in section so that you can see now how it's cutting based on those settings. So there's my shaft. So notice I set the base constraint to be from level 1 and then start 1,000 above that. So again, base constraint level 1, but then base offset is 1,000. So you can see there the bottom of the shaft is a meter above level 1. And then the top of the shaft is 100 mil above level 2. So you can see that it just sticks up 100 mil above that. Now, the only purpose of this shaft is to cut this floor. So the shaft could have been set to level 2 and then let's say minus 500. Okay, so as long as it goes through the thing that you're trying to cut, in this case it's just that floor, then the level settings are up to you. And the plan you use to create it as well is up to you. You'll often find you switch between several different plans sometimes when you're creating a shaft as well. So a bit like other things like floors and roofs and stairs, it's good to think about the plan you're using to create them, but you can basically use is shaft a tab? Well, it's on the architecture tab. Yeah, so again, under architecture, you have the opening section over to the right, the opening panel, I suppose, and then you've got the shaft tool just there. Yeah, so yeah, good one to play around with if you haven't already. So again, there with the new stair tool, just got to watch out with the old ones. If you get a stair made with an earlier version of Revit from before 2018, then it won't have a separate run. The run or the path was part of the stair. And so this option I'm going to show you, it actually used to come up in the stair settings, but it's a similar option. So, and you'll see what I mean when I choose the path now. So I'm using tab to highlight the stair path. All right, so there in the bottom left now, you can see it says stair path. So I'll click and that'll select it. Now, again, they're a bit slack with the terminology. I wish they'd get their act together and be a bit more consistent, because they call this a stair path, but you'll see when you're making a stair, they also call the thing you get when you making a sketch, they call that a stair path as well, even though they're different things. It's just annoying, but that's something you've got to just watch out for. But here again, I'm looking for the separate stair path object. So again, with tab, I can highlight it, select it. And this is one thing where they've been pretty good, because they know, even though they're Americans, and you can't blame them for that, but they at least know that the rest of the world doesn't do it their silly way. So they have automatic up-down direction just for America. For the rest of the world, they have fixed up direction. And I've spoken to American architects. They know that they should be doing it this way too, but they're stuck with doing it the old silly way. So poor them. But again, we don't need to follow their stupid system. And so we just use an up direction. That's all you need. If you see an arrow on a stair, you know it points up. And so therefore, you don't need an up text. So firstly, make sure it's on fixed up direction, right? Because up-down direction makes no sense. And with up-down direction, you do need to have the text, right, to tell people whether the arrow points up or down. But again, because we don't do that, we have all our arrows pointing up, then we don't need the up text. So once you've set it to fixed up direction, then you see you've got the option there to turn up text off. But now, if I go back to the level below, this is where it gets really weird. That's the same stair, but notice it's got another stair path object. Right? It's a crazy thing, but there's a reason it's like this. So essentially, you have a different stair path for each view. And so there, I have to go to the level below, choose my stair path there as well, and then change it to fixed up direction, and then turn the up off. But I'm going to show you a really good trick. I do this for every one of my projects. At some point, I will just select one of the automatic up-down direction stair paths, and then right-click and choose Select All Instances in Entire Project. And that will select all of them. Notice how many there are. I don't have 51 stairs in this project, but I've got a lot of views. Okay, so if I was to do this manually, I have to go and select all 51 of these things just to turn off the up. Right, but by using that little trick, select one, right click, select all instances, that'll get them all. Then you can change them all to fixed up direction, standard, and then turn your up text off. Okay, so that should help you with that. Yeah, I know. Look, I did it manually as well, so don't worry, you're not the only one. I have done it manually with a very large building as well. Took me it's a couple of days, really, of going through and checking. But luckily, yeah, once you know, you can do it a lot faster than that. Yeah, so anyway, I don't want to go too much further than that with 2D drawing, but hopefully a lot of those things will help you. And then by now, hopefully starting to get a good setup with your drawings. Get rid of this elevation and start to put on my better elevations, the ones I've just done. Yeah, how much better is this going to be? Yeah, much better. Okay, and then if you take your time and set things up in a nice, organized way, then you can keep designing away and make changes, and then see those changes come through. So into your sheets. And then hopefully if you've gone further and looked at some of those other steps we've been looking at, like taking it into Photoshop and definitely into InDesign, right? Hopefully starting to get rid of the Revit labeling, and then you can redo those things in InDesign. And that's a really nice way of getting annotation that's maybe got a bit more of a design aesthetic, and you can have, again, these design details presented a bit more nicely, again using InDesign. So maybe something like that, but I might even look at rendering the plane with Photoshop. But again, if you've got shading, or you want to do lots of annotation, or you want to have arrows and other graphics that indicate different things, I'd seriously think about doing that in InDesign as well. So just think about the way you get these sheets exported. It's really important with 2D drawings particularly that you line things up exactly. And so again, having a sheet set up like this with the location of things set out very accurately will just make it easier for you when you take it into InDesign to then update your and make changes. One sink is okay, but shower and toilets are not showing. Yeah, I know, that's frustrating. It happens a lot with families. So I've got a similar thing here as well. So you can see there that, I'm getting my toilet, but the shower isn't showing very well. So when things like that happen, there are ways of fixing it, but you may find that it's easier and quicker just to redraw it in 2D in Revit. So just so it's clear, you can see there my wood flooring going into the area where I've got the shower isn't very good, but I've got my tile floor there, which I could extend into the shower, and that would solve it. Right, so that's what I would do normally. But let's say I want that just to have a white fill. Let's say it's a horrible acrylic shower tray, and so that would just be white without the tiles. So I'll just show you a couple of good tricks for that, and then I'll finish this video. So I'm going to go to put in a masking region. We've had a look at filled regions, I think. So filled regions, great if you want a pattern. Right, and they're actually one of the best things in Revit. You can do lots of good things with filled regions, but just want to make sure you know about masking regions as well. So I've got the line style on thin lines. I'm going to change that to invisible lines, just so I don't have to think about the line weight. And chain is on, so yeah, it should just let me keep drawing around here. Now I'm going to switch over to pick lines just to pick that curve, and then I'll draw my final line just to connect the end of that curve with the point where I started. There we go. Okay, so I've got my shape. Just so you can see it, I'll select it all so you can see it highlighted. Right, so I've just traced the shower tray. Okay, so I'll finish that. And then you can see it's masking the 3D, but not the 2D detail lines. So it's set up, the masking region tool especially, is set up to work with detail lines. So that's good. Now let's say you want to, sometimes you want to hide those though. So good little trick there. You can use a filled region, and a filled region is going to give you the same option. People wonder, why do we have masking regions and filled regions when I can just make a filled region, and here this one's solid black, so you can make it solid white. These can be useful. even though you might think at first it's just like a masking region. So if I make this solid white and draw the same thing, come on. Okay, so now, this should be hiding this. I'll try to bring to front. There we go. Okay, so that can have an order, and masking regions can as well, but these do a bit better. So there, I've got that on top. But if you know about InDesign, Illustrator, and even Photoshop to a certain extent, things have an order. So here it's covering the detail lines, but I can then just choose send to back, and that will put it under the detail lines. But it will always cover the 3D things. Right, so the floor and the tiles, everything else there is going to be covered. So if I extend this out, you'll see, again, it's covering the tiles. Right, so it's a great way of fixing up issues that you get from the 3D modeling. And again, there's often no point modeling in a lot of detail in 3D when you're not going to see it in a perspective. So this bathroom's a good example. It's just too small to pick up any good perspective views, I'd say, even though I actually don't hate the curved little thing to the shower. That'd make it, for a tiny little bathroom like that, make it a little bit nice. But again, if you try and get a camera view of a space like that, really tough. Who wants to see the toilet anyway? So maybe we go, right, we'll take it the other way. Okay, so a camera view looking at the shower would be probably a nice thing. But it's still going to be a very tight view. And then we'd have to look at putting tiles on the wall and, yeah, to debate that. But yeah, so that's maybe going to give you some ideas about just finishing off your drawings with all those different approaches to 2D drawing. It's really important that you understand that. And again, in the past, it used to be almost second nature because of the amount of 2D drawing that we did by hand and also with AutoCAD. But again, I know you get a little bit spoilt with Revit and expect it to just give you a lot of these other drawings automatically from a 3D model, when in fact, you do need to still draw a lot of things in 2D, even with Revit. And it is expected by the people who make the software that you are going to draw things in that way. And so again, just try to maybe develop skills with those tools, mostly on the Annotate tab. Of course, you've got detail lines there, regions, and then don't forget what we started with, symbols as well. And oh yes, I just want to point out the other things. Text and dimensions are also considered annotation, so they work in a similar way. They're 2D elements. And then there's one that I haven't really gone through a lot, but I just want to make sure you know is an option. You don't have to use these, but again, it could be a good thing to know. You have detail components. So detail components are families that work just like your other loadable families. So going to the, here I've got a detail components folder, and I'll just get a random folder there. Here we go. So you can see there all of these little bits and pieces. So remember before that example, I talked about things like cornices and skirtings. So again, I'm not one of those people who really bothers to model those things in 3D unless I really, really need to. Okay, so instead I would put a cornice usually, if it's for a section, just in 2D like this with that detail component. So again, they're just 2D families, but they're easy to miss because again, under the Annotate tab, it just says component, but when you click there, you can't load your regular components, it's only for detail components. Okay, so I think that's probably more than enough on those things. So I'll maybe finish that video there unless anyone's got any questions that relate to any of those things. Should be more than enough. So, but yeah, really good to know about those things, I think. So I'll stop that recording.